30 lions stuck at a captive-bred lion farm in the Free State had to be euthanized after suffering severe burn wounds and malnutrition. The lions suffered the burns as a result of wildfires which ravaged parts of the Free State last month. When SPCA officials tried to access the farm, the owner refused entry. A warrant was then obtained. The animal rescuers discovered that the lions were unable to stand and walk and had been left without food or medicine for several days. The SPCA says despite its best efforts to tend to the lions' injuries, it became clear that 30 of them would have to be euthanized. The owner has been charged with animal cruelty, and SPCA officials say they're working to ensure the uninjured lions receive food and water.
Well, for more on this, we're now joined by Fiona Miles, the director of Paws in South Africa. Fiona, thank you for your time. Why would the owner refuse help in a case like this?
It's actually beyond me, and I think that this is the problem, is that laws have not been enforced to ensure that there are proper measures in place that should such a disaster happen, proper plans like fire and emergency and escape plans are in place for such facilities. Why the owner would refuse entry is completely beyond me, except that having looked at the pictures of those animals, it's not just right now that they have not been taken care of, but it's clearly a case of ongoing lack of care, lack of veterinary care, lack of nutrition, and maybe that's one of the reasons behind it.
I mean, Tapuma, my co-anchor and I were saying earlier, those lions looked extremely malnourished. They were skin and bones. I mean, it's no surprise that they couldn't walk. They looked like they hadn't been fed in a very long time. Is it a so-called lion sanctuary, or were they being used for canned hunting?
This is a captive breeding facility, as there are more than 300 captive breeding facilities across South Africa, and more than 12,000 lions in captivity in South Africa. This is not necessarily uncommon in some facilities where owners are not taking the proper care of their animals, and whether or not those animals are being utilized for further trade, for the lion bone industry, or for hunting, they still are supposed to receive the proper level of care. And it's absolutely shocking to see these images. These are typical images of animals that will end up being traded from South Africa to abroad for, the lion bone trade. And yeah, we just cannot allow South Africa to go on like this.
Tell us a little bit about the lion bone trade.
Currently, it's legal to harvest the bones and products of lions, to trade them internationally to Southeast Asia and other parts of the world for traditional Chinese medicine. And these cases are increasing over time, where I think it was about 2 months or 3 months ago, that a consignment of almost 3 tons of lion bones was seized in Vietnam. I mean, that is an extraordinary amount of animals that's being shipped out of South Africa. And this is our wildlife, it's our heritage, and these animals are being commercially exploited. And we really are calling on the South African government to really speed up the process, put interim measures in place whilst they are still redesigning the laws that will protect, reverse, halt the domestication of these animals, and provide them long-standing protection in the future.
And this is the second time we've been dealing with keeping exotic animals or wild animals in domestic situations. Is there any kind of legislation that protects these animals?
Currently, of course, the National Environmental Management Biodiversity Act and the Threatened or Protected Species regulations are in place, and they do provide some groundwork in terms of the way in which these animals are supposed to be kept, the standards in terms of keeping, as well as the Animal Protections Act. However, there's very little compliance, and of course, if you look at the numbers that we've just described, it's a huge amount of monitoring. So currently, the Minister for Environment is still, the period for the public comment is still open on her draft policy paper, which will see in particular for lion a reversal and a halt of captive breeding, so that there will be no further captive breeding in South Africa. And that's what we're calling for, is at the moment that the whole of South Africa gets behind this policy to see that the images that we've just seen today are not part of our future.
I think it's largely unspoken, and we don't see these visuals very often. How much interface have you had with the Department of Environmental Affairs?
We've been campaigning actively for, I think, 15 years, as well as so many other organizations, specifically to see an end to this. This is one case in particular, and one of the worst that we've seen in many years, but they are happening more and more frequently. So we are supporting the Minister's draft policy position paper for the end to captive breeding, the end to the commercial exploitation of lions in particular, and certainly to see a lot of effort put into the wild spaces in South Africa, because there's only about 2,500 wild lions left in comparison to the more than 12,000 lions in captivity in various facilities across the country.
Thank you so much for joining us, Fiona. That was Fiona Miles, the director of Paws in South Africa. It's a pity we always have to talk to her about such devastating news about our animals.